Okay, so last week we started on what was one of my favorite chapters, probably because it's the most easily intangible to apply, is the chapter of discipline. And I didn't show this slide, but if you, sorry, I realized now I'm not sharing my screen. So if you remember from, does everyone remember Robin? He uses this term sweat equity. I really like the term, and it really refers to, the principle of discipline. And I found a little like a image that kind of captured the increased value earned from labor. And it really captures the concept here of discipline. And it really means, we talked about last week how discipline is not just, working hard and doing more, but it's also doing more in the right direction. So it's effort that's placed in the right direction. And we'll talk a little bit more about that direction this week. But really, direction is just referring to the fact that we want to also incorporate the other elements, the other principles in that direction, which means hard work or effort that's in line with truth, right? So, and if you remember, has everyone heard that story of Picasso? And Picasso, he was in the market, and a lady came up to him, and the lady came up to him and said, "Do you mind, like, Picasso, just drawing something really, like, just can you just draw something really, like, of this image here? Could you just draw it really quickly on this napkin?" And she's like, he's like, "I'll pay, like, whatever you ask for." And so he took 30 seconds, and he drew it, and he said that'll be, that'll be $10,000. And the lady said, "Well, Picasso, that only took you 30 seconds to draw that." And Picasso said, "It took me 30 years to be able to do that in 30 seconds, right?" And so to me, that really captured kind of this point of sweat equity, where you just, this concept of the iceberg, with the iceberg, we only see 10 to 20% of what we visually see in an iceberg. It's only 10 to 20%. 80% of the iceberg is below water. And so it just speaks to the point that so much of what people see externally is just really the small tip. And there's so much more underneath the hard work that goes behind what we see. So again, I really like that story of Picasso to capture that point. But remember, from the book of Dharma, Simon, he's really defining, simple definition of discipline as giving our best both. So that's a really simple way of thinking about discipline. So we talked about that burning of that internal fire, and that internal fire requires us, and we'll talk about this again, we'll remind each other after, but that internal fire requires protecting that fire so that it can be nourished and it can grow. I'm just curious, just wondering, have I stopped, like, can everyone still see me?
No, your image is frozen, but your voice is still coming through. Oh, now you're
okay.
Now you're back.
All right. Okay. I thought so. I had frozen, so I just wanted to check. All right. And so then, as a reminder, we talked about that principle of the bicycle, that discipline is really crucial because it breathes life into the other three disciplines, meaning, this analogy of the bike, that if you are on a bike and if you're stationary, it doesn't matter which way you turn the bike, you're not going to be moving. So discipline is like that movement on the bike. To be able to steer the bike, it requires some pedaling and movement forward. So similarly, discipline is that movement forward to be able to steer, right? And so we talked about last week, also just going back, about why we struggled to develop discipline, and some great points came up. We talked about having fear. We talked about some lethargy, and how that can, really help us developing discipline. We talked about being impatient and sometimes unrealistic for trying to make bigger changes, right? So making big changes in too short of times. And then I brought up the point of sometimes we don't align with purity, and what that meant by not protecting that inner fire, and also letting other things come in, which means, exposing our senses, the gates of entry that potentially can distract us, right? So what we see, what we hear, what we put in our mouth, everything we expose what we expose ourselves to also can impact that internal fire that we're trying to build. So I really liked this quote that I'm happy for us to all chat about, was this here. We can work very hard but if the direction is wrong, then we can simply accentuate or enlarge the problem of life, right? And so this is a quote from the book. I'm not pulling it out from anywhere else. And so I just wanted to, hear from everyone. Does that has that applied in anyone's life? Can anyone pick out a moment where that potentially has come about? I can think of just practical world examples where we've seen that happen, but and I'll share a couple. Like, I think, when I think of, for example, major industries that potentially exploit the environment for profit, that sometimes we see oftentimes that it can lead to natural disasters, right? So, looking at the oil industry is a very simple example, right? Another example that I think about is, when we see stock market crashes, right, on Wall Street. That's also an example of, people working extremely hard towards something to have it completely collapse, right? And that, for me, it's very much because they're not aligned with with the various other principles that we've spoken about. Another simple example is when we see, for example, athletes also, they can work extremely hard, but if you look at people like bodybuilders who may do steroids at the same time, the after effect on their body of effort in that direction completely cripples them after they come off that way of life. So those are just some examples that came to me. I don't know, does anyone have anything to share about what they've seen or anything that's been in their own life? Gabrielle?
Yeah, this is probably why I had the feeling I want to write something about discipline, because I'm born in Germany, and in Germany are people raised very disciplined. And I think the whole world knows where it ended up. Because there was a lot of discipline, and they were very disciplined, and they were very eager in discipline. But the interesting thing is that I know the whole world looks at Germany, that there was a false reason behind it. And of course it was, but it's known that they want to possess a lot, but why they really made focused on a special religion. So it's mixed the discipline, the eagerness and discipline, the religion, and the political system, because the political system abused the religion system of Jewish people. They were very strong in believing, and they didn't understand why they were successful people, because they were hard in believing. And I think this is a very, very world-known thing of if we believe in something, if we believe we're doing something right, and then we have discipline, it can up very, very in the wrong direction. Why I think I love discipline, I'm grown up very disciplined, but as you said, Ricken, I think it's very, very, very important that people check on their belief system and their belief system must be right. And especially in the time right now with this COVID situation, I see it's abused to say people are doing wrong, and it's abused of a political manipulation. And I think now a lot of things are coming up that people, every person his own, has to check the belief system. In checking the universal principles of respect of each other, and not making difference in I am right and you are wrong. And I think, I'm sorry, that was a bit more than but when I'm always in with my heart.
Thank you, Gabrielle. We really appreciate the comment.
Thank you all for listening. When I'm always in with my heart.
Thank you. Does anyone want to add to what Gabrielle said, or anything else that people wanted to share to build off of that?
So it's so interesting to me. Everything that has been brought up so far is just these big things, right? These big macro things. And what I thought of right away when I read it was my own situation, and so it always strikes me as interesting how people just think of things in different ways. But I had let you all know that I had an event last week, and it was essentially sharing my experience of just that, where I realized really that all the problems I've had in my life were really are generally because I didn't have that firm direction and the tapping into why, and really having that that route before me of where I wanted to go. And then what it leads to is living in a way that's incongruent, right? That maybe you're not living according to your priorities because you haven't gotten clear on what they are even, right? Or what's really important to you. And so I guess that's what I think about when I read what you put there, because exactly, if you're just wandering around, like I made an analogy last week about sailing, and you're just kind of rolling with the waves, or you're going in one direction and then onto another, it's like you're letting other forces just control the way you go, versus actually really going in the direction that that you need to go to, right? Like taking control of your life. And I guess that's what I have experienced, right? You can go along, but if you don't have direction, you're not really getting anywhere.
Yeah, it's a wonderful point. And
I made him so pensive that he froze.
He's frozen.
Stacy, you're so funny.
But I guess, Stacy, if I can follow on your comment.
Sure.
Oh, there he comes.
Sure.
Is he back?
Go for
I
it,
don't
Tiff.
know.
Go for it.
I think you go for it.
And it's funny, and when you talk about following the sails and letting the winds go, and I think it's a fine balance, right? Because
Yes.
we need, and again, like Gabrielle said, so we need discipline, we need to have goals, and we need to focus. But I think we can also hyper focus, right?
Yes.
So, and
Inflexible.
when we allow ourselves, when we have to control everything,
Yes.
then we leave no room for the universe to give us that little extra.
Exactly.
that shift in the sails.
Exactly.
So it really is interesting the way that we have to play it, because allowing is my big word. Like for me, that's one of the things that meditation taught me, is that I have to give up control and just kind of allow things to happen, but still we need the direction. And maybe that's what it is. it's the roots, it's the foundation, which is what we're getting. I guess we need discipline as a baseline, as a foundation, but know that if we get too strict, like Gabrielle said, like you said, you need the faith and the belief, but if it becomes too intense and it's the only thing that we're inflexible, then that's maybe how we get into trouble.
That's right. And I think I'm now circling back, because I guess I would say, like, for my example, it's not that really I didn't have, I had no direction. In some ways also I had the direction of like my parents or what they thought I should do, right? So it's like I'm like trying to force stuff, right? Because it's like, yeah, I've got to do this. But in reality, it wasn't really my direction. Like if you tap inside yourself, right, you realize that's not really the direction that I really needed to go. And that's why it always maybe felt wrong. Also, maybe that's why the control comes, right? Because you're really kind of going against what the universe really wants you to be doing.
For me, I'm starting to get an internal barometer. When I'm doing something that I know needs to get done and it's life-giving and I just can't stop, then that's the right thing to be doing. But there are some parts of my world where there are things I need to do and they're incredibly draining. So
yes,
you're going against, you require a discipline and you can't always do the things that make you happy. But if the balance is too far out of whack and you're doing too many things that feel hard, that's usually a pretty good internal barometer that you're doing the wrong things or you need to find somebody else who enjoys them.
I love that expression, Paul, like
yes,
that internal barometer, because it's such a great word to use to allow us to gauge ourselves, right? How we're feeling. Love that.
Yeah, and Paul, you just hit on the point that also brought up here. I'm not sure if you remember this. It talks about here where you know, when we're kind of aligned with ourselves, like when we're acting and we're aligned with ourselves internally, then the discipline and what we're doing, there's an element of being effortless, right? Because we're also aligned with ourselves. And I think, you know, a lot of at least I see that sometimes people are doing a lot of things because we're looking to other people and say, oh, you know, I need to do that too, right? Whereas you know, our natures, and that's why I talked about last week, knowing ourselves is such a big part of that right direction, because you know, people have different natures, different strengths and weaknesses, and based on that, I mean, there are definitely I think overall habits or routines that benefit kind of any type of person. But when we look at a lot of the specifics, that, you know, the more we're aligned with ourselves, the better, the more effortless it can be. And like you said, you know, bring that feeling of just not always being a drain, right?
And then there's the wrong decisions that you spend a lot of energy and you end up going in that direction, but you really should have gone in that one. But that's something entirely different too.
Yeah.
I think we've all done that one.
Well, last week I went back and listened to Byron Nelson's podcast that he did with Bilitis. And one of the things that Byron said, which I think is, this quote reminded me of, is, am I planting my seeds in the wrong garden? You know, you plant them there, you keep watering them, and they're the ones growing, but it was the wrong garden to start with in the beginning.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I also want to add, it fits all into Tiffany's, to Paul's, to Stacy's, that when Tiffany said this, letting things happen, it sounds like it's the opposite of discipline, but it's not. It's just, I think it's very important when in Chinese they say you stay in the middle, be in your center, and we think this side is discipline and this side is letting just flow everything, but actually there is a certain energy in our life we cannot control anyway, because I learned more and more by looking back on my own life. that in theory, people say when you are born, the day you are born, you bring an energy where in the universe, they know already when you also will die. And I was thinking about this, is my life determined? Or I am responsible for all action? It sounds like the complete opposite. But as deeper I dived in, listen to my feelings. This is why I had the feeling I want to write also in the chat. And before I was very disciplined. And when I stopped and I listened more and more to my feelings, and like Paul said, so listen to my feelings and my senses. What did my senses tell me about situations? My body senses entered my heart and ended up in my head and worked together. And then I thought, I knew things before they happened. I knew them and it was impossible to know them. And I thought, oh, now it's becoming very strange. And at the beginning, I started to sort of becoming afraid of it. But then I thought, isn't it that if we look at all things in the material world, cannot be the same things in another realm, and they connect with us through our feelings, through this, through the feelings we have, because we still live in a very male energy thinking. This it's a male energy, that we are productive and that we are in the head, that we think, that we want to understand everything. And we are all raised up in this energy, which comes actually from the patriarchat. And I'm very grown up in that kind of energy, very strong. But as more I ended in situation I could not control. There was no way of controlling them anymore. And so the only way was going in my heart and as religion tell us, believe in that. When I believe in good, in God, I believe in there is good, there is love, and love is the highest form. It's actually just a belief, but this belief in love, and that love is the strongest force in the whole universe, helped me to come through very, very, very unhealthy, very, very challenging situations. And as more as I did this, as more I realized, oh my God, I felt so much guided from a higher realm. And I thought, oh, and as more as I opened up, as more I got guided. And I think this is so amazing how much we can gain if we allow our feelings come through and listen to our heart. This is why I could not suppress the feeling to write in the in the group. Okay, I know about discipline, but the feelings of the senses are also so important. I know from experience. You see, I'm very full of feelings. Okay, now I stop because so I will probably end up 3 hours later. I love you all.
Thanks, Gabrielle, for sharing. I was just, in reference to that quote too, I think, purity, when we talked about discipline being balanced with purity, for me, it also means that, definitely feeling is really important and we have to acknowledge our senses. But I think there's also a balance that sometimes when we kind of, we can give into the senses too much, again, like building up that fire sometimes can be watered down, right? So I definitely think that we always need to be feeling, otherwise we can just go into kind of rote activity without, without thinking or reflecting on it. So that quote was definitely trying to kind of bring in the two sides. It was definitely lesson last week, or at least I hope everyone saw it that way. So I just wanted to move on to like the next slide, just to kind of move things forward. I know we've talked about a few, we've talked about a few principles. I wanted to go back and just make this kind of a little practical. And I took this from kind of the book of the Science of Habits, because, discipline does involve some element of forming routines and habits. And I wanted to share this image to kind of bring us back to, how do we, like, a framework by which we want to improve or make a habit. Because I'd love for people that, take away something that tangible that they could apply if they're trying to, build something up. And so, with everything we do, there's some type of cue, there's a routine, and there's a reward. And recently I was around New Year's. What my actually it was Ed. He was giving a session on kind of New Year's resolutions and things like that. And one of the interesting things that he mentioned in that talk was, instead of always focusing on our effort specifically in developing habits, we should kind of look at creating a system, right? And so I think of, like, if we want to think of a practical example of, let's say your habit or something you want to build is, self-reflection or self-improvement. I see this group on Wednesdays as like a system now, right? It's a built-in system that hopefully we have in our day-to-day life, that is basically fostering, that let's say that habit of self-reflection or self-development. And so what I mean by kind of creating a system basically then, we're utilizing each other, we have it scheduled in. And by creating a system, then we're not always just relying solely on our effort. And so I just wanted to bring up that point of thinking of what we do in our life and what we want to kind of, the direction we're going in, as thinking about our life in terms of systems rather than specific, actions, which sometimes always rely on our own effort. And I know, like, for me, when I've kind of shifted that thought of thinking of, developing systems in my life, just that simple principle has gone a long way for me since January. So I just wanted to kind of bring that in. And so this is according to the book, The Science of Habits. I'm forgetting the author right now, but hopefully people have heard of that book. I can go grab it off the shelf for people to see. But this is really how they identified, the framework of habits. And the first part was just identifying, the routine, like this is a habit you want to change. Sorry, the second part was experimenting with rewards. So it was, for example, if you set an alarm for like 15 minutes after you've done the task you want to, and write words recalling how you felt. And again, this is the feeling part of it, which is, again, I feel really important. And then trying to isolate the cue. So that's kind of the third element in like working on the habits. So what that means is, identifying the location, the time, the emotional state, other people immediately preceding the action. And I see all of that, again, when I look at something like this Wednesday session, we have a time, we have a location, we have other people, we probably know on this call at 6 a.m. And so then, the plan is basically planning for, we plan for the cue and choose the behavior that delivers a reward, that we're craving, right? So does that make sense to everyone, or does anyone have any specific questions around that? It's just really just a framework from the book that talks, that goes back to this, this specific, it's basically just elaborating on this framework. So routine, reward, cue. And so if we figured out the routine and then we fast forward and we feel and we assess a reward, then we can basically try to create that cue to be able to, trigger the routine. And again, I'm just using this Wednesday, meetup group as a very simple example. If we wanted to understand, if the routine was our, development, self-improvement, self-reflection. That's routine. Hopefully everyone's still getting a reward, and that's why they're here. And obviously we have a list of cues that helps us get here, right? We have a time, we have an emotional state, we have a location, there's other people, which I always feel that if we're leveraging other people, it's always gonna help us execute. And then we have immediately preceding actions. So yeah, I just wanted to bring this up because I really feel that it's relevant to this area of discipline and trying to either build or maintain that fire, that internal fire that we're looking to build. So then I'm just going to basically go through and just review some disciplines, or sorry, the principles from this chapter that were discussed. So the first one, going back to now kind of summarizing chapter, that the fire of life and our inner, is basically, when we refer to that, it's the inner intensity of our life. And that, this chapter is really, really kind of asking us to, to address, and to kind of face that inner intensity. It doesn't mean that we're, it shouldn't be a painful process. And we're, as best possible, trying to sometimes face what we sometimes may resist. And the quote that that speaks to this, I said it last week, but I'll just repeat it again this week, was this point that was that Simon brought up in the book, where he is he's talking about what does the quote go? It says, yeah, it's I think I have it here. Yeah, it says, if we continually avoid our inner intensity in our life, we will never become the diamond we're capable of becoming, right? So again, the whole word tapas, it refers to a little bit of heat, right? So we're just, again, trying to emphasize that, the fire is not always going to be an external one. It's that internal fire that we're looking to address. The second principle that I wanted to just reiterate was that discipline requires purity. And again, purity, we're referring to just what we allow in, in our, kind of consciousness, what we allow into our life to be able to protect, that fire. If we're starting it, just to kind of build it. And if it's, if it's grown, then what we can use to maintain it, right? So again, what we're allowing into our senses, specifically going back to the principle of purity. The third principle of discipline, we spoke about it. If we remember, what does that mean, that right effort? We talked about right effort having two dimensions, the dimension of effort and the dimension of direction, right? And so as best possible, we want to try to act from that place of truth. And furthermore, what that kind of was referring to is trying to avoid acting from a place of fear, regret, or confusion, right? And that's really what, this principle of trying to align with truth, because if we're, and so often we can think of times when we did act out of these, these three emotions, fear, regret, or confusion. And we won't get that long-term result that we're desiring when it's out of these three places. So just, when we refer to right direction, it's just reflecting on these emotions and trying as best possible to align with truth before we're jumping right in. So then that means, we've applied some discernment before we put in effort. And then the last principle that I wanted to, that's talked about at the end of this chapter is discipline, mind, right? And so at the point Simon was just talking about at the end of this chapter, we really should be, in the realm of making effort. We still need to take care of our body. You know, according to the principles of Dharma, the body's seen as a temple, right? And so when we, you know, it's sacred, right? And so whether it be exercise, eating the proper way, getting enough rest, taking some time out ourselves for the body, that's really what it means to kind of, you know, looking after the body. The mind, you know, with the mind, it really refers to our own kind of self-talk, right? So you know, the talk of necessarily like, you know, kind of being hard on ourselves, putting ourselves down, comparison, and so this is really what this you know, taking care of the mind is looking for. It's really looking at what our self-talk is and what our own internal dialogue is on a daily basis, right? So, you know, just reading from the book, it's the question asks, what does the mind tell us? Usually it is inventing needless drama in our life. It either wants or it worries. The mind tells us I'm upset or I'm anxious, and we internalize this, believe it unquestioningly. If we hurt our elbow or knee, we would never say I am a hurt elbow or I'm a grazed knee. But when the mind declares I'm upset, we identify it and react to it immediately. It affects the entire course of our day. We spend the rest of the day punishing ourselves with angry or anxious thoughts, right? And so of trying to take care of our mind is really just, you know, noticing our thoughts, and as we, you know, we've heard in probably so many different areas, trying to as best be that detached observer, right? And it's you know, this I really, this kind of resonated with me. The ability to observe the mind dispassionately and to still it is known in India as yoga, right? And so that's really what, you know, the practice of yoga is about, is really trying to move into the place where we're looking at things, but we don't identify and attach ourselves and say that is necessarily reality. And then, you know, again, discipline of the heart means looking after the heart. And that is also, you know, for me, when I think of discipline of the heart, it really brings in the principles of forgiveness, because I think sometimes forgiveness, when we don't forgive, then, you know, we at the same time also, our heart takes a hit at the same time. So the kind of the wrap up reflection question that we'll get into with our small groups, and is this one of, we all have different areas of our life where there's some areas our discipline's really good, and I want us to you know, identify those and commend ourselves. And then there's going to be areas of discipline that are going to be areas of improvement. And so, for example, maybe we're really good at our physical, you know, our health is really good, like doing our exercise, going to the gym, whatever that may be. But for example, the area of discipline of, let's say, like our finances in life, or our relationships, or, you know, again, like there's so many domains of our life, you know, and Robin's identified those different domains. And so I just wanted us to look at all the kind of, you know, the various domains of our life. And they can be different for different people, but just look at the areas of strength and the areas that we're looking to improve. So I'll just go ahead and break us all up into some groups so we can chat a little bit, and then we'll come back. Just trying to see, there's 10 of us. All right, so we got 5 groups. Oh, so I cannot chat. So Avni can't chat. So that's fine. Maybe then what I'll do is I'll do this manually then. So I'll assign Ida and
So Ida, I don't think can either. So
oh, Ida can't either. Okay,
no.
That's good to know. So then we will just and Stacy. All right. Why don't we go ahead and I'll put Avni and Ida together. They'll be quiet, silent together. All right. Everyone should see their room. Everyone's coming back. All right. Some productive conversation, I'm hoping. All right. Great. I guess some people have maybe fallen off, but that's okay. Does anyone want to share anything?
I can.
Sure.
Yeah. Can I?
Yeah, please, Hiba.
Yeah. Hi. I will not share the subject specifically, but I will share something really very golden. I was with Rita in the same room. So I guess she said one word. She went back to her childhood, and when she was speaking, I was, correlating. So, some things, I guess, few things we do, and it extrapolates to let us understand why behave in a certain way and how we can reframe and how we can know our strength in certain things and the way of improvement. But, she pointed on something in childhood that I shared with her the same thing. It was really very, very interesting. So I guess, if many people live something similar stories, I guess they will behave. Because before she said how she's behaving, I told her that I expect from this thing you would behave that way. And she said yes. And it's something similar. We experienced somehow a similar experience in this.
Wow,
So
that's nice.
That's it.
Thank you, Hiba.
Welcome.
Paul, Enver, anyone else? Or Rita?
Well, I had a wonderful chat with Gabriele and learned about love and discipline a lot. Thank you very much.
Nice. That's great. Yeah, Tiffany and I also had a really great conversation. We were talking about maybe, and I don't know if anyone else can identify, we were talking about areas of discipline that require like improvement, and physicians, the two areas that for physicians that always like generally come up are one, relationships, because they're quite busy at work, and two was finances, right? Just managing finances. Like it's really common for doctors to, finances are coming in, you just kind of either neglect it or just give it to someone and you just forget about it, right? So we were just talking about developing more discipline in those two areas. So we'll just end off, and I just want to end off like two quotes that I thought were really powerful from the book. And it says, it goes back to the one we were talking about before. If we're continually avoiding the inner intensity of our life, we will never become the diamond we are capable of becoming. So again, we should just embrace that inner fire that we're trying to develop. And then the last quote that I wanted to share, which was also from the book, is that self-respect is a fruit of discipline. The sense of dignity grows with the ability to say no to oneself. And that was a quote by Abraham J. Heschel. And I really liked that because it was really nice to think, and I see it in myself that, yeah, when there's a tremendous amount of respect that comes when we are disciplined in areas of our life. And yeah, it does definitely, it comes with keeping boundaries in certain regards. So hopefully everyone enjoyed those two quotes. So that is that is the area of discipline. Does anyone else have any closing comments or thoughts on this chapter? I think it's a really good one, and I really like that it just focused on discipline, not just from the place of doing more or working harder, but really trying to step back and say, okay, how are we going to apply that effort? Why are we going to apply that effort? And just really making it more focused and discerning a little bit more before that effort is made. So that's really the biggest thing I appreciated out of this this chapter.
Yes, I agree. Just you were talking about the direction that we go in, and that quote that comes to mind that was often said is that less is more, and that whole idea that but in the right direction. I know it's something that's just been really helpful in my life is meditation, and trying to silent meditation. When I was in a really busy state of working, it was like taking that 7 minutes in the morning and like all these different ideas in my head of what all these situations that I had to deal with, and it was like sitting quietly 7 minutes, and it was getting ego out of the way. I think ego was a big thing, but when I was able to get ego out of the way, sit quietly for like 7 minutes, okay, what do you want me to do in this, and then ideas would populate in my head, and then going out and doing them to the best I can. But oftentimes it was less was more in terms of what I was doing. It was like, okay, tell this person to do this, or give this idea to this person, and let this person run with this. But then it was getting my ego out of it. Like I don't have to do all those things. And so yeah, ego was a big part. It is a big part of, I think, sometimes us doing too much. And so that was just a helpful. And going back to silent meditation for me has always been the tool, or one tool that really helps me to know what to do and what not to do. And that whole idea of, less is more in so many situations.
Nice. Thank you, Rita. That's such a great reflection on not always feeling like we have to keep up with others, right? Because I think that's really, again, that's like the ego too. And just being able to decipher the two is such a powerful thing. And thanks for sharing that your meditation practice really helps with it, which really, I'm very excited to be able to tell everyone. I'll kind of end with the announcement, was that in 2 weeks from now, this was Ida's idea. She's on the call, so she'll be able to, she's going to hear this, is that a little while back, I had shown Ida a little bit more about from my practice, which is specifically mantra meditation. And I showed Ida a little bit, and she really started using it for herself and really found it beneficial. So she asked if we could kind of share it with the rest of the group. And I thought that was a really good idea, but I didn't think that I was the best person to do it, even though I've been doing it for many years. So we are really happy to announce, and Paul will know who this person is, but I've been able to ask a monk, Satchidananda Swami, who's going to be joining us in 2 weeks' time to do a 2-part session on like mantra meditation for all, like for the whole Titan group. So it really, we're kind of getting at that level 3 purity person comes in and helps answer our questions and teaches, who has like, he's been doing this type of meditation for over 50 years. And so I'm really happy to announce that in May 19th and 26th that he'll be joining us. So we'll have a poster, but I just wanted to make that announcement and let everyone know that it has been Ida's idea that has kind of come to fruition. So it'll be really, really awesome. He's based out of Germany, so I'm really hoping Gabrielle can join us. And I think for Paul and Avni, I know Avni will be really excited. He's doing these series of talks right now with Upbuild on the brink of death. They've been really informative, and I think I might get everyone to look at one of those before the session just to get a sense of who he is. But yeah, we're gonna have mantra meditation with a monk. for 2 sessions in a couple weeks time. And which will really build nicely after Simon, because we're getting towards the end of the book, and this is a really nice, very effective practice that, you know, I just had some experience with, but that we'll all be able to learn more so and hopefully apply to our own life. Thanks, Aida, for the great idea. But yeah, I've been working on that for the last week. So Satchidanand Swami and I met last week to kind of discuss the details. So the dates are set and we're ready to go.
So it will be on the 19th?
Yeah, so it'll be on the 2 Wednesdays. So we're gonna have, so our next 3 weeks are great. We have Simon next week on the 12th, and then we have Satchidanand Swami on the 19th and the 26th of May.
And it will be, sorry, because I will be traveling, so I need to check if I'm not in the airport. So on that day, it will be at what time? So for me, just to make adjustment.
Right now, I mean, if it works for everyone, I will keep it at 6 a.m.
Okay, so I will check that my timing. And another question for next week, it will be a reflection on all the book with Simon, or
so
we'll work on something specific?
So next week, I mean, he's gonna, like, if you look at part 3, so basically part 3, chapter 3 or chapter 9 really gets on kind of like application, like breathing life into the Dharma code. So he's gonna really get into like kind of chapter 9. And
chapter 9
answer questions on the first 8 chapters.
So it will be on that one, not on general on the book, just specifically on this.
Obviously, like we've gone through pretty much, like we're now through most of the book. We're through all 4 principles. So he wanted to come in after chapter 8, and so it'll be pretty much chapter 8. But I think he also wanted to go into chapter 9 as well.
Okay, and 7 a.m. right?
Yeah, it'll be 7 a.m. I'll remind everyone, but it'll be 7 a.m.
Excellent, thank you.
So I hope, yeah, I'm really excited for the next 3 weeks, and you guys get a break from me.
Thank you very much, Rakesh.
Yeah, no break.
Great.
Yes, no break needed, but thank you so much for doing this, Rick. It's been
I agree.
Fantastic.
No break needed.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we can get a good audience for all 3 sessions. They're going to be a great opportunity, and I think, yeah, they're going to breathe kind of new life into everything we've discussed.
Wow.
Thank you, Ricken. Thank you for organizing this for us.
Yes,
thank you, Ricken. Thank you, Aida.
Yeah,
thank you, everyone.
Aida.
Yes.
Thank you, Aida.
Have a great day.
All right.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.